It's been around for a long, long time, and it's always operated the same. And history has got a bad habit of changing systems and control. So, because we're old new system, sure, when you change software.
You know, there's times where
When you change software.
there's times where I'd be okay learning a whole new software, to be honest.
I'm gonna be in the office sometime tomorrow.
Am I on? Now, good evening. We do have a member of the Minister Alliance with us this evening. Would you please come forward, Colton, and pray for us?
Jesus, we thank you so much for how good that you are. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the leadership that you have appointed. God, we thank you for the leaders of Oak Grove. God, we thank you for what you are doing in and through this community. God, would you be glorified in everything that's said and done in this room today. God, we love you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call the May 5th, 2025 Board of Alderwomen meeting to order. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Tracy Newcomer.
Here.
Melissa Johnson. Sierra McMichael.
Here.
Rachel Kilmer.
Here.
Kelly Netto.
Here.
Pam Pope.
Here.
And Mayor Dana Webb.
Here, thank you. The next item on the agenda is new business deletions or continuances. We do have one item of new business tonight. Kelly, you just got seated, but would you please go down to the floor and be sworn in?
I, Kelly Netto, do solemnly swear that I possess all of the qualifications of the office of Alderman Ward 2 of the City of Oak Grove, that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Alderman Ward 2 in accordance with the laws of the state of Missouri and the ordinances of the City of Oak Grove, and that I will honorably conduct myself while in office.
Congratulations, Kelly.
Just kidding.
The next item on the agenda is public comments. City Clerk, do we have any this evening?
There are none.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. These items are considered on the consent agenda so that members of the Board of Alderwomen, by unanimous consent, can designate routine items to be approved by one motion. Tonight, we have approval of the April 21st, 2025 Board of Alderwomen meeting minutes and expenditures through May 1st, 2025.
I move that we, approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. We do not have any tonight, so we will move on to new business. The first item is a public hearing regarding the proposed annexation into the City of Oak Grove of property, I cannot speak tonight, generally located at East Campbell Road, part of Section 33, Township 49 North, Range 29 West. Mr. Randall, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you. So tonight, there's a public hearing and an ordinance for annexation of property. The city received a petition for voluntary annexation of property generally located east of 39712 Northeast 3rd Street in Oak Grove, Missouri. The owners are Steve and Lisa Bailey. By state statute, to approve annexation requires that the Board of Alderwomen make 3 affirmative findings in reviewing petitions for annexation. One is that the property is contiguous and compact to existing city limits. The second is that the annexation is reasonable and necessary for the proper development of the city. And third is that the city has the ability to furnish normal municipal services within a reasonable amount of time. So staff's findings, based on the location of this property, staff has determined that all 3 requirements under state statute are likely met. The proposed property currently abuts annexed territory. There is an image in your packet from the Jackson County Parcel Viewer that highlights the 34 acres to be annexed. There are utilities, public utilities available on Third Street, and that for the development of the city annexation would be proper. So state statute provides that upon approval of the ordinance, the annexation shall become effective unless there is a written objective filed by at least 5% of the qualified voters in the city or 2 or more qualified voters in the area to be annexed within 14 days of completion of the public hearing. So as a result of this requirement, if the board adopts the ordinance tonight, the annexation would become effective in a 14-day waiting period. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ladies, do you have any questions for city staff or Matt?
This might be a dumb question, but does this change the zoning of the property, or how will this be zoned once it's annexed in?
It will retain its current zoning within the county, so it'd be ag.
Ag, okay.
Any other questions for city staff? Members of the public who wish to come forward to speak may step forward at this time. Please state your name and address before you speak. I now open the public hearing. If there are no comments, I close the public hearing and move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action for Bill Number 25-05 regarding an ordinance providing the annexation of unincorporated territory located generally at East Campbell Road, part of Section 33, Township 49 North, Range 29 West. It's an ordinance.
I move for first and second reading by title only of Bill Number 25-05.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for the first and second reading of the proposed ordinance by title only. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. City Clerk, would you please read the full title of the bill 2 times?
An ordinance providing for the annexation of unincorporated territory located generally at East Campbell Road, part of Section 33, Township 49 North, Range 29 West, and the extension of the corporate limits of the city of Oak Grove, Missouri, all pursuant to Section 71.012 of the revised statutes of Missouri as amended. An ordinance providing for the annexation of unincorporated territory located generally at East Campbell Road, part of Section 33, Township 49 North, Range 29 West, and the extension of the corporate limits of the city of Oak Grove, Missouri, all pursuant to Section 71.012 of the revised statutes of Missouri as amended.
I move for adoption of Bill Number 25-05.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of Bill Number 25-05 to ordinance. Any discussion? If not, City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Tracy Newcomer.
Yes.
Sierra McMichael.
Yes.
Rachel Kilmer.
Yes.
Kelly Netto.
Yes.
And Pam Pope.
Yes.
The motion is approved, and the ordinance number is 2132, and it is adopted. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding R1 single-family district regulations, including property development standards. Matt?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this item has been here before the board a couple of times. Really, the purpose of this report and for tonight's discussion is to summarize the recent discussions and recommendations related to the proposed changes to R1 zoning district standards, including lot size, width, depth, and setbacks, as well as to provide context and summary of the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations. So this really began back in February, on February 10th, during the Board of Alderwomen's workshop. The initial discussions regarding the minimum R1 lot standards were held. The board at that point requested that the item be returned for additional discussion at a regularly scheduled board meeting. That board meeting was held on April 7th. The board had continued discussion, and ultimately the board directed staff to seek recommendations from the Planning Commission regarding the proposed R1 lot sizes. At the April 15th Plan and Zoning meeting, the Plan and Zoning Commission reviewed our current R1 standards and ultimately recommended some following changes to our regular code. So just as a reminder, our current code, minimum lot size is 9,000 square feet, minimum lot width is 75 feet. We do not have a minimum lot depth currently. Front setback 25 feet, side setback 10, rear 30. So the Planning Commission has recommended that the lot size be reduced from 9,000 to 7,500 square feet. The lot width be reduced from 75 to 65. They also had the request to increase or to add lot depth as a requirement at 100 feet, and then keep front setback at 25 and side at 10, but also then to reduce the rear setback from 30 to 25, so that the front and rear are both 25 and they match. So really the big changes are 9,000 to 7,500 square feet, reducing lot width, mirroring the rear setback to that of the front, and adding lot depth. One of the questions that was discussed at the previous board meeting was, what does this do to the buildable area of a lot? So that is the area that you can actually place your house, the footprint of your foundation that sits within that lot as it relates to setbacks. So if you remove the 25 feet at the front, 25 in the rear, and the 10 at the side, what does that leave you with? So the buildable area is the space on a lot for the vertical construction of your building. So our current code, now obviously every single lot will be slightly different than this, but just based on the current code, 9,000 square feet, 75 feet wide, that would leave you with approximately 3,575 square feet of buildable area. Our typical new construction footprint that we've received in the last few years, they typically range from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. So your typical build will be somewhere in that 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, and you've got 3,500 square feet to sort of settle your house in there. The planning and zoning recommendations, if they were adopted, would reduce that down to about 2,930 square feet. So there would still be room to place a typical house on that minimum lot size. Then the other question was, well, what does that, I mean, that's great in a picture and all that, but what does that actually look like in either a nearby city or an example that could be found? And in fact, one of the examples that we have is in our own city. So we have in Creekside is a PUD subdivision, so there are some aspects of that subdivision that are smaller, different lots than our current requirements. So I pulled an example of lot 39 and lot 40 of the approved Creekside Phase 2, and those lots are 7,500 square feet, so that matches the square footage of the planning and zoning recommendation. The lot width is slightly smaller at 60 feet, but the side setbacks range from 5 to 7 feet. So if you take that out of the equation, the area that you could build in is roughly equal. So in your packet, you have an image there of the Creekside Phase 2 with 39 and 40. Then the plot plan for lot 39 shows where they have fit the house, the proposed house on that lot. These actually have been built. So Google is pretty quick doing aerials. So lots 38, 39, and 40 have actually been built, and there's an aerial image in your packet of those lots, as well as a street view of lots 39 and 40. So you can kind of see what that buildable area looks like once it's actually put in place. So that was really the best example that, while it's a little bit different than the planning and zoning recommendations, it's pretty close to what the types of lots and houses that could fit based on their recommendations. If further in the packet is some additional information. It's the same kind of information that we had before. You know, the previous zoning ordinance that established setbacks was approved in 1962. After that, our current ordinance was adopted in 2003. So for the last 22 years, we've been operating off that 03, and prior to that, it was the 1962 ordinance. The 1962 ordinance was 8,400 square feet. The lot width was 65, front was 25, side was 10. The rear actually was less at 20, and there was not a lot depth requirement in the 1962 zoning ordinance. So the process, kind of where we are, is possible action from the board tonight is, you can certainly just keep the current code. So at that point, you just direct staff to take no further action, and the current code would remain in place. If you would like to direct staff to begin the process to do formal amendment to the Unified Development Code to reflect any type of particular revised R1 standard that you would like, if you were to direct staff to do that, we would then prepare a formal report with the proposed amendment language. Public notice would be issued. That would go to Planning and Zoning Commission. Once again, they would then review the formal proposed changes to code, provide a recommendation for approval or denial, or approval with modifications. That would come back to this board. There would be a public hearing, and then you would, adopt or deny an ordinance at that point to officially change the code. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Very good. You did good with the aerial shot and the lot street views.
So helpful.
It's super helpful.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
You're
So-
so good at your job.
I have a
You're
question.
so good.
Yes.
Why does some have lot depths and some don't? Like looking at other cities, like what's the good or the bad thing about stating a lot depth? I don't know.
Well, it's just it's their preference of what they want to do. Their planning and zoning or their board has decided to have that lot depth.
What does it mean? Like, what exactly does lot depth mean?
Literally the depth of the entire lot, right?
Yeah,
Which
so-
I
There we
thought
go.
we had decided we didn't want to do that because we have a front and rear setback already. So
Right.
what's the
Makes
point
sense,
of?
yeah.
You did, and then the planning and zoning decided, Pam, chime in when you can, if I do anything incorrectly. They decided to change it to 7,500, but then they wanted to add the lot depth. The only problem with that is that will hinder builders from building on, like, fill-in lots, or even some of the lots, they may have to have a bigger lot. The math just may not work if you're going to do it at 7,500 and then have the 100-foot depth, correct, Matt?
Means from front to back, it has to be 100.
Like, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, right now, you already have 25. You have 25 in the back, right?
Yeah, 30 in the rear and 25 in the front.
Okay, 30. So you have 30. So think about it. They have 30, you have 30.
So you're still
Plus,
60
in addition
feet.
to the 100?
Then they're saying take away the 30 is what planning and zoning was, and make that 100 instead of the 30.
So in addition to the 100, so 130 feet total of depth, is that
No.
correct?
No, just 100.
We didn't have a lot depth at all.
Yeah, there never was one.
We had a rear setback at 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the board was recommending it to go to 25, I believe, correct?
Correct.
And if I remember correctly, I understand what you're saying, Dana, about how the numbers may not work, but for the majority of the lots, the calculations worked perfectly, I think, at 7,500 to put that at 100-foot depth. With the width and setbacks, it seemed to me that they ran that through the calculator. This was an extremely long meeting.
2.5 hours long.
Oh, my God.
They, very well thought out. They
Yeah.
worked hard on this.
Yeah, so it would in most, I think in all the
In
cases.
most lots.
On a new subdivision where you can plan out where your lots go, the buildable area makes sense with that.
Yeah.
The one perhaps potential impact this might have is if you don't have the ability for a 100-lot subdivision to really program it out.
Yep.
And you're left with a lot that might be very wide. So you might have say a 100-foot wide lot or something. But then if you have to now be 100 feet deep, you'd be at a 10,000 square foot lot. So if you had a 100-foot wide lot, under today's code, it could be 100 feet wide, but only 90 feet deep. So this potentially could create, in some circumstances, a larger lot than what our current code would require now. If you had a lot that was wide but not sufficiently deep, you still have to do that 100 feet of depth. The other thing is, some of the question of why some cities do it, some don't. Us, Odessa, Blue Springs, KCMO do not have a lot depth, others do. Some of them are a math problem. It's like Pleasant Hill, 7,000 lot size, their lot width is 700, so their lot depth is 100, but that's, in a way, if your minimum's 70, you kind of have to have a lot depth of 100 just to meet the 7,000. And then if we go to the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations of 65 feet wide and 100 feet deep, there's a potential there could be some confusion amongst people that come in for a plot plan or come in to subdivide a lot. They might say it's 65 feet wide and 100 feet deep, doesn't that meet minimums? Yeah, but not square footage, so you don't meet 7,500 square feet. So that,
Oh, good night.
But then
One
also
thing
to
that-
add to it would be the R2, R3, we would have to change those because that math wouldn't work. And then, because why would you let R2 and R3 not have
yeah, that
the
is,
depth, but then you make R1 do it?
to be consistent, that might be something to consider.
just a
Our,
thought.
our R2 and R3 currently don't have lot depth requirements. So, you know, like an R2, you can have a single-family home on 8,000 square feet. So you wouldn't need to have a lot depth in R2, but you would in R1. So you could end up in a situation where somebody's zoned R1, they might have more restrictions than a lot that's zoned R2 with that lot depth requirement.
I just
Something
don't-
to consider.
I don't understand what the purpose of the lot depth serves, because we already have the front and rear setbacks to protect, to make sure people have a yard in the front and the back. We already have all the setbacks. It just feels like it creates more obstacles when the whole point of this was to like, let's build affordable houses. So I guess Pam, maybe you were at the 2.5 hour long extravaganza. What is the intention of this addition?
I really think it was more of a math problem than anything else, if I remember correctly. Dana, am I
Right.
wrong?
No, I've been asked the question of what was the real answer? Why did you add that when it was never there? And there never was a clear answer of why they added that. It just became this math problem, and they wanted to add that on there.
I really don't think it's terribly relevant probably to the board.
Yeah.
That's not my impression anyway. I mean, I'm sure y'all read the minutes, but they're 17 pages long, so I mean,
Right.
there was, I'm not going to remember everything, but you all read it.
Well, I mean, there's really not a good reason to add it. It never was, we never had one, and then now at this point, there's not a good reason. I mean, I challenge you ladies to talk about it and possibly not have it, but if Pam thinks something different from what she took from the meeting,
No,
maybe
I
not.
agree that if the front and rear setback is there, then the rest of it's rather irrelevant, probably.
It probably doesn't matter 99 times out of 100, but it's like that one time it does matter, and we could put a house on the lot, and that's what's stopping us. That's a bummer.
And you do, I mean, you do understand that, so if a developer comes in and buys a lot of property, they can easily make those adjustments. But like Matt was saying, if somebody has, I don't know, just a few acres here in town, then it would really limit them with that lot depth.
So Pam, it sounds like what you're saying is this wasn't like their hill to die on. They just
No.
thought it made them, okay,
Absolutely, I do
Absolutely not.
no.
Okay.
It became a very long math problem.
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I like all the other numbers. I mean, you guys.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
I like numbers.
I think it makes
You like there, it says 7,500 square foot for the lot. And you guys do understand that's minimum. So a builder can come in and, you know, they can make it much bigger if they want. And then the 60 foot, and then the setbacks, oh no, that was PD. So, yeah, okay.
Well,
I was on
just-
the wrong one. I
I
was
just
on the
like
PUD.
Seeing the pictures in Creekside is like, those are normal sized
Absolutely.
houses and like nice yards, and that's the minimum. So then we only go up from there. I feel like that's great. I mean, yeah, I think it's great. I don't really see the point in adding the 100-foot depth, but other than that, I'm on board.
I don't think I would have understood this without this diagram, so
Yeah,
thank
no,
you.
definitely.
Yeah, well, it's good to.
Very, very helpful.
It is good to see a plot plan and then see where the house sets on the plot plan.
Instead of just numbers, it's actually, you can really see
Talking about
it.
the aerial plot plan, isn't it?
Right.
Language.
And just thank you to Pam and Dana and
Yeah.
Nat and Kim and everyone that sat through a 2.5 hour planning and zoning meeting, because this is, I do think it's a big deal, and I'm glad that we've all spent a lot of time on it and making sure we're going in the
Oh,
right direction.
I agree. I mean, I'm not complaining. It was just, we wanted to tell you that there was a lot of conversation
Yeah.
put into it. It wasn't just some quick thing of them throwing out numbers, you
And we
know.
had already had discussions about it. They had not, so this.
Correct.
They really worked hard that night,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
obviously.
So appreciate
They
it.
did, they did. All right, so
Oh, so-
am I hearing, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just gonna ask,
it's been many words said since the last time you said it, but are we looking for a motion to move, or
So
are we
if
just
you-
looking for instruction?
If you ladies want to move forward, I need you to tell me exactly what you want city staff to do to move forward. Then it will go to planning and zoning. There'll be a public hearing,
Okay,
planning and zoning, and then planning and zoning will have a meeting about it. Then it will come back to you with a public hearing, and then you ladies could adopt it. They may make some considerations after if they have a public hearing.
yeah, yeah.
And then same as this, you can adopt it. But I just need, you're not approving what they recommended, so I just need your motion to approve what you want to recommend.
Rachel?
Well, I mean.
I
can
guess you
say-
could just say minus
Can
the,
I say, I motion to move forward with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations on minimum lot requirements other than the 100-foot lot depth.
Second?
Yeah.
okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the planning and zoning recommendations for lot requirements other than the lot depth.
And a thank you to planning and zoning.
Yes, thank you.
Any discussion?
I should-
If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Just a second, I got to get back to mine. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the AUDs. Matt?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So
ADUs. I always say it backwards.
this,
You guys didn't correct me there.
I didn't even catch it.
Come on.
similar purpose from what they are ones that we just did is to talk about the proposed addition of ADUs to our code. The timeline on this was the same meeting. So on the February 10th, the Board of Aldermen work session, you guys initially talked about ADUs. A lot of information at that meeting was provided to you. You asked for time to absorb that and bring it back and talk about it again at April 7th meeting. So you guys had continuous discussions at that, and same thing with R1. You directed staff at that point to seek recommendations from Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the potential for ADUs, and if so, what would those recommendations be for requirements? At the April 15th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they reviewed the potential amendments to the code. They also had some feedback from the board as well regarding potential ADUs. And they really did a great job. As was mentioned, this meeting was 2.5 hours long. They tackled R1 and ADUs and really put, I think, a lot of thought into these things. So the Planning and Zoning Commission's ADU recommendations for lot size requirements for ADUs was that no additional requirements be made. So as long as your lot meets the minimum requirements, you can put in an ADU. There's no special requirements. ADUs attached or detached, should the front facade be related to the principal structure? Should it be set behind it? The Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations on that was that ADUs actually must be detached from the primary structure. You can't do an attached ADU. It would be too close to a duplex, I think, was some of the concerns. The ADU must be located on the same lot as the primary structure. Only one ADU allowed per lot or per principal structure, and that the ADU must be set behind the principal structure. Allowable height for an ADU, the Planning and Zoning Commission's was that it can't exceed the max height of the base zone requirement. So in R1, that's 35 feet, so the ADU can't exceed the R1 requirements, and also can't exceed the height of the principal structure. Side and rear setbacks for an ADU, Planning Commission's recommendations was to keep the ADU the same as the current accessory structures, which right now are 8 feet from side and 8 feet from the rear property line. Allowable size of an ADU, their recommendations was that an ADU cannot exceed 900 square feet of livable space, but you could have maybe an attached garage to your ADU as long as the livable space did not exceed 900 square feet. On architectural style, they recommended that the ADU must match the principal structure, similar material, style, color. So if your main structure is brick, ADU should be brick. Main structure is board and batten. That's what the ADU should be as well. Additional parking requirements. they recommended that ADUs be required to have one additional off-street parking space. So right now, our code requires in R1 to have two exterior off-street parking spaces. So if you wanted to have an ADU, your lot would then be required to have three additional, or three total off-street parking spaces, one additional over the current requirement. Allowable occupancy, there was a lot of discussion related to this particular portion. So their recommendation was the owner of the property must reside in either the principal structure or the ADU. The owner may, I suppose, rent the entire property to one party. So if they didn't live there, they could just rent the house and ADU to somebody. But if the ADU is rented separately, then the owner must reside in the principal structure. So the
So they couldn't rent it to someone who, that person then rents it to someone else.
Correct, yeah, so you couldn't rent it to two different,
Yeah.
right, so you couldn't rent the principal structure and the ADU, but you could, build a house, build an ADU, and then move out and then rent that house and
Right.
ADU to just one person, one family, right?
Gotcha.
The long discussion of that was because at first, can I interrupt there?
Yeah, please.
At first, it was just, everybody really wanted to just, you had to live in the primary resident.
Okay.
And then the discussion came up of why,
Okay.
and why should you have to?
Okay.
So then, that's why the first line is that you can live, like, I could live in my ADU, and someone else could live in my house.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
I
I was
honestly,
like,
I have,
that
I'll have
completely
to-
different way.
I'm sorry. I don't remember that the owner may rent the entire property to one party. I don't remember that. I'm gonna have to go through the minutes again.
Well, I suppose that what is mean by that was that they couldn't rent an individual piece of the property to somebody else, unless it was the
Right.
ADU. It's like they couldn't live in the ADU and then rent the main house.
Wait, I thought she
Okay.
just said they could, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I was reading here. The owner may rent the
Yeah, they
entire.
can, the first line, they can.
And I didn't remember it that way. I just remembered that they didn't have to live in the primary structure.
Correct.
As long as the owner lived on the property. So I was just a little confused by that one bullet point. The owner may rent the entire property to one party.
Yeah.
Now I'm even more confused.
I obviously was not at the meeting, but I have a little pushback on that one as well, like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm teetering on both sides, because I'm like, okay, do we restrict homeowners from renting out their like, so say they sell it
Can
and
we
someone else.
clarify, though,
Yeah.
before we jump to something else, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
only
fine.
Because I'm gonna get completely lost, because I feel like you two just said completely different things.
I think we
and
did.
contradict
Let's
each
do
other.
this. Can we do this? Can you guys hold your thoughts? And I interrupted Matt on that. Can we let Matt finish the list? Then we'll go back to that one first, the allowable occupancy. Deal? Okay, Matt, will you finish?
Yeah, well, so the last two are fairly
Yeah, there's only
easy.
two more.
So, on separate utilities, the commission recommended that separate or shared utilities, so either separate for the principal and separate for the ADU, or shared utilities for both, be at the discretion of the homeowner, and that no separate permit be required other than a typical building permit. So if they come in to build an ADU and it meets the code, staff would issue a building permit. They wouldn't be required to come seek a special use permit from the planning commission and board for every ADU. So on the allowable occupancy, going back to that, maybe I can try to, I think the thought from the planning commission was that if the owner wanted to rent, that the principal structure could not be rented by the owner if the owner lived in the ADU. But the owner could live in the principal structure and rent the ADU. Now, the owner, if they wanted to live in the ADU, somebody else could live in the principal structure. But they
Correct.
couldn't separately rent it. So part of the discussion was,
Yeah.
aging in place. And so the thought was, well, maybe you have a house that isn't particularly accessible, right? And maybe you're, a single, person, but you have kids, and you want to build an ADU that is great for yourself. Small, one bedroom, it's, floor level, it's accessible, and then your kids move into this primary structure, maybe
Right.
with your grandkids. And that was sort of the thought of letting the owner live in the ADU. Somebody else could live in the principal structure, but it not be rented to another party.
I'll share. I gave my example at the meeting was because they said, why? Who would ever do that? And I said, when my mom got cancer, I would have, if I could have, built an ADU in the backyard, and I stayed in it and let her have my house. And then some of them said, I get it now, because I would do that too. Or any family member, let them have my house, or my kids, if I'm by myself and my wife and I, or whoever, or, husband can go live in the ADU.
We look at this from such different perspectives, because you're looking at aging in place, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And all I'm thinking of is people are gonna.
You're thinking of more rental, no.
Airbnb and.
And also remember, Kelly, that this will not happen in
Oh, no, I
any
know,
of the
I
new
know.
subdivisions.
Yeah,
And honestly, we may not even get a permit for an ADU for 2 years.
Yeah, yes.
But it's there if you,
Right.
because you live in a neighborhood, you could do it. If something comes up and you need to
Yeah,
take your whole garage and turn it into an ADU.
but I couldn't because it would have to be separated,
Yes.
right? It has to
Well,
be.
you could add on to the garage, you
No,
could.
it has
No, it has to be a
That's one thing
completely
I want to push
separate
back on.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go back to that one.
Okay, I have two.
Well, are we done with the allowable?
No.
Okay,
Well-
go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that Pam, because is that how you understood it, or no?
Which,
We're staying on allowable occupancy
Yes.
right now.
okay,
The-
allowable occupancy, I feel like that second bullet point is confusing. The owner may rent the entire property to one party. Sounds as if they don't have to live there. I mean, I'm not
Yes.
sure why that is in there.
It can be removed.
The owner, the first bullet point, the owner of the property must reside in the principal structure or the ADU.
No
If
contradicting.
someone else is, I think maybe, if I go to understand, if a different family or different people are going to, well,
Doesn't make sense.
no, you're right, it doesn't make sense.
So I guess the thought, then on that would mean, I guess just trying to play this out, would be that if somebody owns a house and they build an ADU, and then they decide to leave, move, but keep the house in ADU, they could only rent the house, but I'm not sure how we would enforce no one then staying in the ADU.
Right.
Like,
There's
how
no
can we
way you
stop
could.
homeowners from renting their.
Yeah, there's no
Right,
way.
if somebody were to have it, yeah.
Okay.
We can't police that.
Which, and then my other thing on the occupancy is, what's the difference between the owner living in the ADU, or I'm sorry, the owner living in the main house and renting the ADU, and then the owner living in the ADU and renting the main house? Like, why can't they, if they're like, this house is a split level and I don't want to live in a split level anymore, but I can't afford to go buy a new house, I'm gonna build a ADU and then rent my split level?
They didn't really have a good reason on that. They just, I remember that was deep discussion back and forth about who lived where.
And whether or not we could enforce it. I think it was, the primary thing was that the property owner did not have to live in the primary residence.
Yeah,
They could live
that was
in
the biggest
ADU.
one.
I agree with that. I just think we should leave it open-ended. They just have to live in either property.
Yes, I agree with
And then they
that.
can rent, because like, we don't know what people's needs are gonna be. And then we also can't restrict them from renting the whole property altogether. But we can't have, right, that's what the second bullet point is like, we can't stop people from renting. So like, someone builds an ADU because they're older and they need to live in a ranch and their house is split level, they rent their split level to their kids, whatever. Then 10 years go by, they sell it to someone else that just bought the house because they like the house and it happens to have an ADU. That's the point of the second bullet point, is we can't stop them from then, in 5 years after that, deciding this is now a rental home, right? Am I understanding that
There was
correctly?
discussion of that,
Yeah, well,
yes.
I think the thought on that was, and maybe we could try to rework it so it's more clear, was that you couldn't rent to two different parties, right? You couldn't rent the principal structure, and
That
then
makes
you also
sense to
couldn't
me.
rent the ADU.
Yeah.
So the idea is
Correct.
that if you were going to rent it, it's just to one party, it's just to one
Right.
family.
You can't turn it into two properties.
Right,
basically, yeah.
right.
That makes sense there.
Yeah, and I
We
think
should
that,
clarify that.
To
in
clarify it
some
to
way.
two parties, maybe.
right, can't, maybe, yeah,
You can't
maybe,
sublet it.
can't,
Just something like
Yes.
that.
that might be a better thing to say.
And that was a question that was brought up, so I'll add to that. And Pam, remember, we talked about that, what would you do if your house sold and then there's this ADU in the backyard? Well, we said, we can't police that, we can't control that. You know, if they don't want to do anything with it, or if it becomes a shed,
Can be storage.
we can't do anything
Yeah,
about it.
that's up to them.
But we can say they have to live in one or the other.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
if they're being rented separately. So it's confusing.
Yeah, exactly, that's where you.
Because
we
it's like
can
you can
just-
rent
just
all
the-
of it together.
We'll work on the language
Yeah, I
of
think
that
it's
second
gonna
bullet
have to
point.
be worked on. So, sorry.
I think we're all on the same page of the intention.
I think you are.
I think we are too.
So are you good if that language is changed on the allowable occupancy?
Yeah.
I have a comment.
As-
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to make.
Sure.
Is I personally don't agree with the 900 square foot. I think that's too big.
Too big.
Okay, but wait a minute, we're done with
Hang
the
on, yeah. Can we stay on-
allowable occupancy,
Sorry,
right?
I'm
Let's
sorry.
stay on one and finish it.
Can I say one more thing about occupancy?
Yes.
I don't think we resolved, do we all feel okay if they live in the ADU and rent the principal? Are we all on the same page with that? Okay, okay, okay.
You good?
I just wanted to clear
Do
that up.
you?
'Cause- Yes, I do. I
Yeah.
feel strongly that that should be allowed, but
Okay.
I don't think that was clear in the bullet point.
So, Matt, we're going to work through these, just like we did. So we're good with allowable occupancy if you'll change the verbiage on bullet point number 2. Okay, I guess we're going to skip around. Pam, where are
Wait, and
we?
bullet point
And
number
that's what
3.
I was just getting ready
Oh,
to say.
and bullet point number 3, excuse me.
They get to reside in either
Yeah,
one.
if you'll, the language would be different.
Yeah.
All right, Pam, where are we?
I was jumping back up to allowable size, and this
Okay.
is just my personal opinion, is that I feel like 900 square foot is too big. It is the size of, I mean, there's many houses in town that are near that in square footage, and they're 3-bedroom, 1-bath houses. I don't think our intent of this is to
No.
have a
Well, it's saying
whole
it can't
another home.
exceed it, then it can't be bigger than 900.
Right,
So it could be smaller.
right. Or
She's
we
saying
could-
that's too big.
Or we could say it can't be bigger than 750 square foot, is my
Good point.
point.
Yeah, we
Because-
have a whole lake house that's like 680.
Right, so, and then if you add a garage to that, I mean, you're taking up, that's a very large footprint of most any lot.
So what do you
That brings
recommend?
into question, is the garage included on the 900? Like it's, no?
No, it's
Livable.
livable
No,
space.
livable.
Oh, it does say that.
Yeah,
okay,
theirs
yeah.
was 900 livable square feet, because there was a lot of discussion about whether or not you wanted to build an ADU, but particularly on like an older part of town, maybe where you don't have a detached garage currently. Somebody, brought up, well, if I build a detached garage, then can the ADU be above that? But then does the detached garage now count towards?
Yeah.
So that's how they landed on the 900 square feet
That's,
of living
that's what I would have
space.
to do. Would be,
Also, that kind of opens up to whether or not they could then make a larger structure and dedicate some of it to storage that wouldn't be part of the livable. So there is a potential that the 900 square feet, it might even be bigger than that.
Yeah, you're right.
You could have 900 square feet of livable and then 400 square feet of,
gotcha. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Storage or
So the
garage.
footprint would be bigger, but,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Okay.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying to detract from that, but that kind of brings me to I've had a finger up because I'm like, I want to comment on this. I don't agree with that it has to be detached from the home. Because what if you wanted to add a garage onto your house and put an above garage apartment? I understand the duplex comment, but we're already requiring it to be set back, so that prevents the duplex look. And I may be on my own here, but that's the other thing that jumped out at me is like, I don't know, I feel like that kind of goes against the intention here.
I agree, but there was a lot of discussion on that.
There was a great deal of discussion.
Pam, if you'd like to explain.
Well, I'm not sure if I can. There was a great deal of discussion. For the most part, I think that they felt like it, basically, you're just adding on to your home.
Yes.
You're not building an ADU, you're doing a room addition or and you can say that there is no door in between
Yep.
until your permit is passed, or your building, living permit is passed, and then you knock a hole in the wall and you've got an extra 900 square foot on your house.
What's wrong with that, though?
Well, that's a different
Because you
permit.
still have to meet it's a different, because I thought we said they just have to get a regular.
Well, they do have to get, you're right, but that is not an ADU, that's just
But.
adding
but
on to your
on-
house.
But like, what is the difference, though? Because we still have to meet setbacks.
Because
Still
if
have to
you
meet all
did
the
that,
codes.
you wouldn't have a separate entrance.
But if you can, so let's just say, I'm devil's advocate, like, I
Yeah.
don't have a dog in the fight either way, but, so let's say I want to just add on to my house, and I can, and there's room on the side before I meet setbacks, what's the difference? You know what I mean? You still have to meet setbacks, you still have to make it match this principal structure. Why does it matter? I guess. Is
Why
what-
do you feel strongly about it?
I feel strongly that someone should be able to build an attached ADU if they can do so and meet the city codes. And I think we're like poking hole, like being very hypothetical about it, and like, so let's say worst case scenario, someone is a jerk and takes advantage of, but like, it's the same building permit regardless, right?
Right.
So I guess I just don't understand what the difference is. If someone calls it an ADU versus calls it an addition, it acts the same. They don't have extra rights if it's an ADU, right?
Correct.
Or get any added benefit or something. So
It was just long discussion. They were concerned, just as Pam said, that somebody would just, build it, have a fake wall, knock the wall out and say,
I just don't know why you would do that. It'd be cheaper just to build an
yeah,
addition.
yeah.
Because you have to still meet the same setback. I just
Yeah,
don't-
that's, I
I
see
just
what
don't
you're saying.
understand.
No,
Like,
it's like just extra.
And I think they're, visually, the duplex look was a lot of the concern, even though even though I believe we would have required a setback, even if it was attached. I think that they were concerned that it was going to look
Like
like.
that you would have a house here and then a mini house here and it would look like that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
And the
to me,
looks
too.
of it, as far as
Yeah.
the architectural style,
Right.
they were concerned about
that makes
too.
more sense to me than what we were just running down.
Right.
The duplex thing. But I still think that the cost prohibitiveness of this is like, but okay, the one concern is we have a blank lot and they're building from scratch. Then can they build something that is basically a duplex in R1? Like, I'm not as worried about that with someone that already has a house that's been, a 50-year-old house or whatever. But like, if it's an empty lot and they pull permits, but they would still, that's a different process though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe the difference a little on the ADU, and this was a discussion planning commission as well, is, well, what if I finish my basement and it's walkout and
Yeah.
my aunt wants to live in there? And that's fine, that's would not apply to ADUs, right?
Correct.
So maybe what helps to visualize this a little bit is what is a single-family home by code? So a single-family home by code is,
Okay, there it is.
you have to have, it's one family, it's one dwelling unit, independent living, you gotta have facilities, bathrooms, right, kitchen, all that. One family, completely surrounded by open space. So that's a single-family home. So if you have an ADU with a different entrance, attached to that, you're now no longer a single-family home by our code.
Got it.
Because you're no longer surrounded by open space.
That is
So at that point,
Yes.
you would be considered R2 by our code, and you'd be duplex, you have to be an R2.
Got it.
So the accessory dwelling unit would then allow folks in R1 to have maybe like a quasi duplex, right? You'd have the primary structure, you then by this code, you then would be allowed to now have something attached to your primary structure, which would no longer mean you're surrounded by open space. So that's the maybe subtle difference between just adding or expanding your current home and letting someone just live there. Like your mom comes to live for a while or something like that. So that might be the slight difference. And I think the concern at the planning commission meeting was that if it's attached, particularly larger ones, you might get closer to that, does it look like a duplex from the outside
The
concern?
doors, yeah.
So then my question though is, what if we attack this from the square footage angle? Okay, other pen in that still. Question, do other municipalities that have ADUs have the same distinction of it has to be detached?
They're all different.
Everyone's
So different.
Yeah,
There were
I mean, bring up a spot
examples.
like that. I know they're all different.
Yeah,
but-
there's so many.
I think a lot of them mostly seem to allow both detached and attached, but it's,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm hogging the conversation, so I'm going to say one more thing and we'll go back to the square footage thing. But I just feel like our intention with this is to make multi-generational family more accessible and make housing more affordable. And I think the cost of building is going to prohibit slumlords, for lack of a better word, from taking advantage of this. Like, I don't think it's cost effective for people to build these to just rent them for profit, if that makes sense.
Oh, that was talked about, that
But-
if you do really well with these, restrictions and things, that there's not going to be a lot of people, because this is going to cost you a lot of money to build one of these.
Which makes sense if you're in you're a different financial, it's different for, but I want to go back to Pam's conversation about the square footage, because I think that could solve the duplex problem too. Of if it's a smaller required square footage, so if
I-
it's, what do you think?
Well, initially, when she was talking about it being very large, I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Because like I said, we have a small cottage at the lake, and it's like 684 square feet. But then when Matt started mentioning you could build a garage and have extra storage, extra room for your family, which we desperately need, and put that livable space on top. But if you lower that, well, then now, you know,
What's-
I don't know.
What's the square footage of like a standard two-car garage? Does anyone know that?
Well, I think that's why they picked the 900. It was to have a good-sized garage.
600? Okay.
Yeah, they picked the 900 they were saying to have a nice-sized garage.
I think more people would be apt to create these things, these ADUs, if they could utilize a garage or something like that. Because if you're gonna be building, well, I don't wanna just build something for my mom-in-law who I don't really get along with. But if I get a garage, fine, she can live above it. But I don't know.
Well, you guys can recommend a different square footage.
So I'm trying to envision your thought, Kelly, on existing lots here in town. And please tell me where I'm wrong. Wouldn't that have to be on a lot that is basically a ranch flat lot for that to even be possible because of the height requirements and whatnot? Because your typical raised ranch, if you then go put you can't put a garage, can you, with an ADU above it in a backyard that sits, 20 feet higher in the air than,
Can't if you do.
and then keep the roof below these roof levels? Is that physically possible? I don't think it is.
I think it would be on a split, because it literally
Yeah,
is.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of
garage,
my
isn't
house,
it?
and I'm like, my house is a
Yep.
split entry level, and my garage, I mean,
It literally is a garage with living
Yeah.
space on top.
Yeah,
and no,
it's-
if I went into my backyard right now, I couldn't build a garage and then a house.
Right.
But I could if I dug down.
Or if it was a walkout lot.
Yeah.
Right, so, a walkout lot.
But you could have a split or a raised ranch on a walkout lot, and it still could work.
Yeah.
Well, it's back to you're not going to see many of the garages in the back it's going to be limited to what your lot is.
I think all of these are gonna be limited, and we
Very
can
much
probably sit
so.
here the entire day
Yeah.
and discuss. But I
We
think
can.
Rachel is right, that we do kind of want to keep in mind that the reason that we even started talking about this in the first place,
Was to age in place.
yes.
And like, there's a lot of people with college-age kids that can't afford to move
That
out, too.
too.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
there
a
it
lot
is.
of,
Yeah, Gavin's never leaving.
So are you saying you want it
on the record.
Right.
higher than 900 or lower? Like,
I
you're
don't feel
saying
strongly
you would
one
like
way or
to
the
see
other
it
on that.
lower, 750? Is it?
That's what
So-
I personally think so, just because I think you're just building a whole nother house.
I just Googled a two-car garage, Google says between 360 and 720 square feet for a two-car garage. So
Yeah, I
What
think.
if we went to like 750? Would you feel
That's-
better about
that's
I
that?
would
what
feel
she
much better about
proposed, yeah.
750, but
Okay.
I've looked at all kinds of houses online at 750, and they all look very,
Perfect.
You can build a beautiful
you
home
could
for
build
that.
two bedrooms on that. if
Yeah, you
wanted
really
to.
could. Yeah, you could. Our cottage is.
So all of you good with changing the allowable size to 750? Okay.
Does anyone else care about the attached versus detached, or is it just me?
The only strong feeling, and not even really, really strong feeling about it, is it does completely change the single-family requirement of that
I think so
zone.
too. I think it
And
was,
I think that if we care about that, I mean, they get to do it, why can't I do it? Or you know what, I don't even know, because this is not my area of expertise, so
I thank you, Matt, for
I'm making it
making that
understandable.
understandable.
Yeah,
because
yes.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't feel that strongly about it. I just think it's a very rare instance where it would work anyways, I think. But I'm
Yes.
thinking if you happen to have a small house on a larger lot that doesn't have a garage, you want to build an attached garage and then have an apartment above the garage that has stairs out, you know, why would we stop them from doing that? But I understand what you're saying too. I just think the intention here is to make it easier for multi-generational, and I think we're kind of cutting that off at the knees a little bit by saying you cannot have detached. But I don't know the other way, I don't know another way to police that from turning into a duplex. I understand that side too, so I don't feel super strongly, but I just.
So how about we just put, if you ladies are okay, that we'll put in the notes when it goes back to planning and zoning, that they can discuss that, the detached, attached a little bit further.
Is there another way we can regulate that?
They had a lot of discussion about that, so.
So I'm sorry to send it back to you guys.
No. All right, so looking through the other bullet points, Does anything else stand out to you that you would like noted, corrected, discussion?
All seems pretty logical.
I just thought it was interesting, the guest house, guest room, and the difference between that and an ADU.
Which one?
Say it one more time.
Oh my God, my voice. The guest house and the guest room, on the UDC identified appropriate incidental accessory structures. So that, the difference is that a guest house, guest room cannot have their own kitchen, but an ADU can. Is that
Correct,
right?
yeah. So under our
Yep.
current code, you can build a guest house, but that is for the occasional housing of guests of the principal structure.
Okay.
So
It's like
it wouldn't be for a separate
visiting.
party, wouldn't be for a different, and it can't have kitchen facilities or permanent occupancy. So this wouldn't be like, oh, my, mom's gonna live there for a year. That wouldn't be it. This is for, hey, people coming in for the weekend, and I've got a guest house. I don't know how prevalent those things would be. The definition of an ADU by the American Planning Association is that an ADU has to be a self-contained, independent living. So if you have an ADU, you have to be able to live in that ADU without needing anything from the primary structure. So you don't need to go in there for the kitchen or the bathroom or anything else. And that's, I suppose, the difference in our current code, which does allow a guest house versus an ADU. And also, there was a lot of discussion, I didn't put it in here, about, well, does this become an Airbnb or something like that? Under our current R1 zoning requirements, you're not allowed to lease anything less than 30 days. So that would include these ADUs. So,
I did not know
I did
that.
not know
That's
that.
citywide.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
yeah, so that, at that point, you're not, residential, you'd be more of a commercial
Yeah.
transient guest housing is what it would be.
I would like to point something out that I agree with this bullet point but regarding the utilities, but I know we had discussed differently amongst us.
We did.
The separate or shared utilities at the discretion of the homeowner. I am very good with that, but we had prior discussion, and some of you were not. So I want to just make sure that everybody is good with that. That it,
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay.
okay.
I hope that's what I said the last time we talked about it.
Okay. So now we just need to go forward with.
Well, let's make for sure, do you have all of the, or, I mean, I guess it's recorded, right? So we'll have all of the corrections for it to go back to planning and zoning. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've got, for the attached versus detached, you guys are kind of leaning towards detached, but would ask that Planning and Zoning Commission has more discussion, more robust discussion about that particular one. Allowable size to 750. The allowable occupancy, I know there's a lot of talk about that one. So right now I've got the owner can rent or reside in either the ADU or primary. So they could rent the ADU if they live in the primary, or they could rent the primary if they live in the ADU.
Right.
And then on bullet point number 2, that the owner may rent the entire property to one party, perhaps removing that and just saying that the ADU, the only way to rent an ADU would be if the owner lived in the primary structure. And then if they then were to later sell it or lease it to somebody else, it would just be to lease the primary structure, and they would just have a extra building on their property. That kind of,
Makes sense.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
very good.
I'm sorry to drag this out, but I want to ask one more question regarding the utilities. We were going to, or at least I believe that the planning and zoning wanted there to absolutely still be a separate disconnect, correct, for the electricity, for fire reasons?
I don't recall that,
You don't recall
but
that?
maybe it was, maybe we did. I just don't recall. I know we talked about the fire code, but we got that clarified with Justin.
Thought that we had agreed they could use, or we would present, that they could use the same utilities if they wished, but that the ADU electricity at least needed to be able to be quickly,
Disconnected
Disconnected.
from the exterior without entrance to the primary, yeah. I think that makes sense, and that might be a building code requirement anyways, but we'll check on that and see if they could have one connection, but would need to have a disconnect just for safety. I mean, if
makes
there's
sense, yeah.
something
Good
going
job,
on and
Pam.
you can't disconnect the power unless you go into the breaker in the primary basement. That could be a problem. Yep.
Yeah, very good.
Good point.
So if there's no other discussion, then I'm just looking for a motion to send the notes and, your questions and things back to planning and zoning.
I make a motion to direct staff to make the amendments to the UDC to allow for the ADU codes. Something like that.
Be confident.
You got this.
You got it.
Is there, what else do I say?
I think that's good. I think that's
Make
good.
the changements, make the adjustments.
So you just say that?
Say it again, please.
Okay, I make a motion to direct staff to go back and amend the UDC for the ADU
To
code,
planning and zoning.
or bring it back to planning and zoning. Oh,
There you go.
first.
There you go. Good job.
I can say it again one more time.
You're good.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to direct city staff to bring the ADU back to planning and zoning. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding an agreement between the 2025 CIPP pipelining project. Corey?
Thank you, Mayor. Here we are again. This is an annual program that we do to reduce I&I inflow and infiltration. So an RFP was posted on April 10th in the Focus, and we began publicly receiving bids. We had an bid opening on April 17th here at City Hall, where the low bid was Visu Sewer. They came in at $123,590. The high bid was $134,000. We had to reject we received 3 total bids. We had to reject one because they submitted some stuff that we're not allowing in our contract documents. So our annual CIPP and manhole rehabilitation program is designed to reduce or eliminate inflow and infiltration into the city sewer system. Defects are found throughout the system using our televising equipment. The contract for this year includes 2,900 linear feet of sewer pipe and 31 vertical feet of manhole rehabilitation work. The manhole work is basically deteriorated concrete, and so they're going to go in and clean those up and reline them with new concretes, what that essentially is. We're also trying something new this year, if the board approves, by going with a 3-year agreement, or up to a 3-year agreement, to try to lock in that per foot price. A sister city of ours is paying nearly $4 more per foot than what we were quoted this year, so it'd be nice to be able to lock in that price. So Visu Sewer's been in business for a little over 50 years. They've completed various jobs, anywhere from 300 feet to 25,000 feet. I've contacted a couple of their references. They checked out well. Poplar Bluff, Jeff City, Lake Winnebago, Joplin are a few. The primary work for them has been, historically at least, east of us. So I feel like maybe they're trying to move our direction a little bit, maybe why they haven't been around here. I couldn't find any local cities, rather, that they have worked with. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Corey. Ladies, any questions for Corey?
Who did we previously use?
Yeah, we've used SAK Construction for the last several years, actually. They've came in as the best bid, and it's there's something to be said there by having the same company so many years. You develop that relationship, but, you know, Visu Sewer, to my knowledge, has never bid on a project for Oak Grove.
Yeah.
And that's,
You feel
yeah,
confident
just
in
luck of
them?
the draw, I suppose. I do. I've researched them. I've talked with them. They've been very informative. They've been responsive with my phone calls and emails. So they're off to a good start already. And like I said, their references checked out well too, and they're providing the same exact product. So I think we'll be okay there. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I make a motion that we move forward with the project with Visu Sewer, or project number 2025-04. Is that?
Second?
We have a motion and a second regarding the agreement between the 2025 CIPP pipelining project. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing the application for the 2025 Emergency Management Performance. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which is a grant that's given by Congress annually to be administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which grants it to the states. Here in Missouri, it's the State Emergency Management Agency that parcels it out to local emergency management directors of counties and cities to assist us in producing emergency plans. This is a 50% grant. We show that we have budgeted 50% of the amount that we ask for, or excuse me, the total amount that we ask for would be 50% provided by the local government and the city, and 50% provided by the grant. And in order to do that, they require us to show proof of planning activities and certain other required activities, of which there's a list in the grant application that we participate in each year. There's certain meetings that I have to go to, certain training that other emergency managers have to go to. I've been to all those trainings that they currently require. And each quarter, we get reimbursed for the expenses of the last quarter, the expenses that were approved in the original grant. Right now, we're coming up on the time of year that the grant, the invitation to participate in the grant program comes out. And as usual, it's waiting on authorization by Congress to see what the total amount's going to be before they can issue the invitation to participate in the grant. But that could happen any day. And we have had in the past notice of a week. You had to have your application in 1 week from the date they announced it. So that's unusual, but that can happen. So we're asking for authorization to apply for that grant when it comes out. Last year, the grant was worth something in excess of $16,000. And we compete with all the other entities in the state that to get funding. There's only a finite amount of money that's available, and there's more entities that apply for it every year. So we never quite know how much it's going to be worth each year. Also, the state of Missouri, quite a few of the employees of State Emergency Management Agency are funded by the same program. So we're just asking for permission to apply for the grant when it comes out.
Very good. Thank you, Mark.
I make a motion we approve applying for that grant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to apply for the 2025 Emergency Management Performance Grant. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is information reports. Matt?
No, thank you,
No?
Mayor.
Lawyer team? No report.
No report, thank you, Mayor.
Captain?
No report, thank you.
Corey?
No report, thank you.
Kim?
No report.
Tina? No report. Okay. Scott?
Yeah, real quick. Today we opened the software up for online purchasing of pool parties, swim team memberships. And I think within 30 minutes, we only had like 3 spots left on pool parties. So
Outstanding.
even with the rate increases, it still was very popular and booked rather quickly. The software held up. The credit card company actually called us and said, what's going on? There's an extremely large number of sales happening. I think it's like 16,000 we did today on just pool parties, so.
Wow. Will you please email the park board, because they spent so much time.
Sure.
Just, remember, Tracy, they were just so concerned about raising the price, which I'm glad they were concerned about
Raise
it.
it again.
But, let them know that they can not be worried. Yeah, thank
It's
you.
very popular, yep.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rachel?
No report.
Kelly?
Just real quick, the new park looks amazing. I know it's not quite ready yet, but that stuff looks phenomenal.
awesome.
It's so.
Yes,
great job, But that's all I
yes.
got.
Sierra?
No report.
Tracy?
No report.
Pam?
I would just like to thank everybody for last weekend. I wasn't
Yep.
there, but I hear it was fabulous. And 14 dumpsters
Yeah.
worth of junk gone
55
from our
tons,
town.
yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, I'll continue with that. So, Public Works, you did a great job. I got to witness all of you, very friendly to the citizens, heard nothing but good. The Codes Department, Matt, you were out there killing it, unloading trucks, trailers. I mean, it was great. Traffic was lined up all the way down Cemetery Road. It was a really good event. So thank you for doing that for the city and voting that. Well done, everyone. My next thing is, I'm going to ask if we can, the June 16th meeting, if we can move it to June 23rd. I will be gone, and your Mayor Pro Tem will be gone. So can I propose that, and can you guys approve that? Since there's 5 Mondays in June, that's why I'm asking to do that.
Can we do that right now?
Yes, that's why I brought it up, yeah.
Sure. I make a motion to approve that we move the June 16th meeting to June 23rd.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move the June 16th meeting to June 23rd. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Would someone please send a calendar invite out to everybody, because it'll be off? And then my last thing is, Kelly, congratulations, another 2 years.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I make a motion, we adjourn to executive session 610.021, 1, and 12.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session 610.021, 1, and 12. Any discussion? If not, City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Tracy Newcomer,
Yes.
Sierra McMichael,
Yes.
Rachel Kilmer,
Yes.
Kelly Netto,
Yes.
and Pam Pope.
Yes.
We are adjourned to executive session.